Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. Merry Christmas. As 2025 draws to a close, today's programme is a special end-of-year Channel's Business Global edition. A look back at the stories that shape markets, power, technology and global business over the past 12 months. From artificial intelligence and trade wars to economic slowdown and leadership shifts. We'll count down the 10 biggest business stories of 2025. Starting off in part 1, we begin with numbers 10 through 5, culminating in the UK's economic political story, before I'm then joined by our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey. We'll then return to one of Nigeria's biggest moments of the year, GITEX Lagos, and my conversation with Google Cloud on Africa's digital future. Then, in part 2, we continue to count down to number 1, before closing with a special throwback to the Femi Otedola Book Club here in London. Let's begin, starting with number 10, and that's Bitcoin. Big predictions, hard reality. After a very volatile year, Bitcoin ends 2025 well below earlier highs. A reminder that digital assets remain unpredictable. Some analysts believe the next big move could still be ahead. Market strategist Tom Lee says Bitcoin could reach $200,000 in 2026, pointing to historical year-end rallies and growing institutional interest. But even he admits the timing is uncertain. Others go further, arguing that Bitcoin could eventually reach $1 million later in the decade, though that would require extraordinary demand. For Nigerian investors watching this space, the message is simple. Bitcoin still dominates crypto, but it remains highly volatile. Big predictions make headlines, but they also come with big risks. Now to number 9, luxury and fashion deal fever. Even as consumers tightened their belts, 2025 saw a surge in high-profile deals across luxury and beauty. Prada's acquisition of Versace, Elf Beauty's billion-dollar purchase of Rhode, and a wave of consolidation showed how brands repositioned for long-term growth despite slower spending. The takeaway? Capital didn't disappear. It moved selectively, backing brands with scale, story and global reach. To number 8 now, gold, which hit record highs. As uncertainty dominated markets throughout the year, investors turned to safety. Gold surged to record highs in 2025, driven by geopolitical tension, slowing growth and expectations of lower interest rates. Central banks and institutional investors piled in, reinforcing gold's role as a hedge in volatile times. For many households and investors, and I'm sure many of our viewers back home, gold outperformed where riskier assets struggled. To number 7 now, big tech layoffs and the AI reset. The technology sector went through a painful reset this year. Major companies cut tens of thousands of jobs as artificial intelligence reshaped how businesses operate. Firms shifted away from expansion at all costs, focusing instead on efficiency, automation and profitability. For workers globally, including in Africa's growing tech ecosystem, the message was clear. AI is creating opportunity, but also accelerating disruption. To number 6, Warren Buffett steps back. An era really did come to an end. Earlier this month, Warren Buffett retired as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway after more than 6 decades. His departure marked the close of a chapter defined by patience, discipline and long-term thinking. For investors worldwide, Buffett's legacy offered a reminder that enduring success is built slowly, even in fast-moving markets. Now to number 5, big topic of the year, the UK economic story. In 2025, Britain grappled with weak growth, falling living standards and mounting pressure on businesses and households. The autumn budget introduced major tax measures aimed at stabilising public finances, including higher employer national insurance contributions and extended tax threshold freezes, pushing the tax burden to its highest level in decades. Ministers across the House argued the moves were necessary to fix the foundations. Critics, however, warned they risked locking the economy into low growth, with job cuts rising and consumer confidence falling. So, where does that leave the UK heading into 2026? To unpack the politics, policy and market reaction, I was earlier joined by our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey. Simon, I should start by saying Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And a Happy New Year in advance. not been so merry for the UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. There have been dozens of polls, but the latest ones as we head into 2026 suggest he is one of the most, if not the most, unpopular Prime Minister in British history. And then, of course, we've got the rise of reform, which appears to be a key theme of 2025. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you could look at this as Sir Keir Starmer just isn't very good with the social aspect. Boris Johnson was quite good at the social aspect. A lot of people would say he did far more damage that Keir Starmer is ever capable of, as did David Cameron before him, because of obviously we had Brexit. But you're right.
Rishi Sunak wasn't great.
But Keir Starmer is the one with the tanking polling numbers, much worse than any of them, even Liz Truss. He's worse than. And I think it's not his strong point. It's not what he's interested in. He's not interested in getting up in front of he's not like a Donald Trump who loves a microphone and loves a camera, or a Boris Johnson for that matter. He just likes to,
or a pie.
Exactly. So he's much more of an administrator. He wants to get on with the work. He wants to. Personally, that's what I would want a prime minister to do. But actually, if you're trying to win over the public in the modern day,
it's not enough.
In the days of populists getting elected, and we're probably going to see Nigel Farage get elected. These people who are very good on a soapbox and they're very good, speakers and stuff. That doesn't quite cut it. And then you add into that, a very tough situation you were left, and also making pretty bad decisions while you're in government. There being no real inspiration behind it.
What are some of those bad decisions?
Everyone was looking at the Labour Party as being this is such a big sort of lead and such a big margin and such a big a landslide win that you can do what you want, a bit like Tony Blair. But it's so different to Tony Blair because there just aren't the ideas that they had. They don't have the same kind of verve and charisma, exactly, and enthusiasm, and neither does the country. So I think that was partly it. Then you've got the big issue which Reform have been all over, which is the small boats. There's people coming across and huge anger towards that. And I think a huge vacuum from Labour and from Keir Starmer in addressing that over the summer. Didn't really, just kind of took a couple of weeks off, pretended everything was okay. I don't think the issue was anywhere near as big as it was made out to be, but they gave them that opportunity. There was that huge dearth there was no news at all. They should have been going around saying, look, we're partnering with France, we're partnering with Poland, or Albania, or whoever it is.
Was he distracted by Trump? Perhaps?
I think, that's the only thing that he's kind of had to go on, right? Is on the international stage, he seems to have stepped up. For some reason, you never had that on your bingo card at the beginning of the year, but Donald Trump and him get on well, and that seems to have helped in terms of tariffs. We could have been much worse off with tariffs if you look at Canada or the EU. That's one win actually that no one talks about, is that we have not been swallowed up by, because we've got a good relationship with the US. But exactly, it just shows that few people care really about that, right? Real people don't care what Donald Trump thinks of you, really. It's much more about what are your living conditions, what are your pay packets, and cost of living is going up, wages are stagnant, and growth isn't going anywhere. So I think it's very hard. And then you add to that the usual Labour infighting, which has again occurred just in the last few days. We've had Wes Streeting talking about the health secretary talking about maybe we should rejoin the customs union. Sir Keir Starmer ruled that out very point blank 2 weeks ago. He's the health secretary. He shouldn't really be getting involved in that. So then there's kind of infighting there. So
typical Labour.
I think so. I think it's they had, and it's disappointing for a lot of people because they had decades, well over a decade to think about getting back into power, and it seems to have taken them by surprise. Now that it's quite tough. I would say that the Nigel Farage has
leader of the Reform Party
has this huge poll lead, 33%, compared to just 17% of Labour, and then the Conservatives just behind them. It's so easy to snipe from the sidelines. It's so easy to say this isn't working, tear this up, defund the BBC, leave the EU.
Especially when you're in the south of France.
Exactly. It's so easy to do that. But we've seen before that it hasn't worked because we've left Brexit, and I think most people, with Brexit's happened, most people probably think that hasn't gone quite according to plan. So while he's got this huge lead and he seems to be doing very well at the moment, but that's not an indication he's going to be a good Prime Minister.
We've been discussing Prime Ministers for several years, several Prime Ministers, believe it or not, Simon. Let's go back to the main question. Is Keir Starmer going to be Prime Minister this time next year? your prediction before we wrap?
Well, it's that, yeah. I struggle to see that, to be honest. I think there are better candidates out there. I actually think Wes Streeting is good and has more charisma. At the moment, people
That's
just
a conversation for January.
At the moment,
Simon.
people just want charisma, right? They want someone they can get behind. The Labour
Wes
Party, especially.
Streeting, charisma.
Well, yeah, I think so. But it definitely more than Sir Keir Starmer.
Does his constituents agree?
I think a year is a long time in politics.
Yes or no, Simon?
They don't need to have another election before then, of course. He could just stay on and stay on and stay on, and polling numbers could tank more and things could get worse and worse. But there's nothing there that could force a leadership run. But no, I would probably say no, he won't be here this time next year.
I agree with you. Thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you. Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. Now from Westminster back to West Africa and one of Nigeria's most important business moments of the year. Earlier in 2025, Lagos hosted the inaugural GITEX Nigeria, bringing together thousands of innovators, investors and global tech leaders under the theme Forging the Rise of Digital Nigeria. With ambitions to build a $1 trillion digital economy by 2030, conversations ranged from artificial intelligence and cybersecurity to fintech, agritech and cloud infrastructure. On the sidelines of the conference, I sat down with Clayton Naido, Commercial Director for Google Cloud Africa. Google played a leading role showcasing how cloud platforms and AI tools can help African businesses scale. Naido told me Africa's digital transformation will only succeed if it is built on resilience, with strong governance, local data centres and inclusive talent development.
What stands out for me about Nigeria is the people, the talent and the potential. And I always say, and these are the discussions I've been having with various government leaders, is that with Google, as well as the potential, what it does, it provides an equalizer for Nigerians. What we need to do is ensure that the opportunity is available. And I spoke about how do we harness the talent. So if you look at the talented youth of Nigeria, and if you look at creativity, AI allows creativity to become world stage. And if you have the youth that can harness the power of AI, the power of Google, and spark that creativity, you will find that solutions being developed in Nigeria will stand on world stage and it will be supporting, huge business impact around the world. And this is what puts Nigeria on global stage for me.
I kind of feel, are we that way with fintech in Nigeria, where it's kind of like, yeah, guys, it has done great. You've got the unicorns, Flutterwave, etc. We love them. But is it time now to move on? And if it is, where do you think Nigeria should be developing?
I think if you look at the potential of Nigeria, we tend to ignore some industrial sectors that are in the heart of Nigerian economy. So if you take agriculture and precision agriculture, and if you look at what developers or tech entrepreneurs can do with agriculture and agri-tech, using some of Google's solutions and AI models, you will find that Nigeria will be able to develop solutions that can be exported, right? So, there's the traditional cool stuff that fintechs and I think the fintech ecosystem in Nigeria has done incredible.
Yes.
But if you look at the other ecosystem as it relates to agriculture, as it relates to what Nigeria can do, edutech, more important, what Nigeria can do in mining and manufacturing, because all the creativity is here, right? And if you look at harnessing that creativity and packaging it the right way, but more importantly, bringing an opportunity. And I always say that we as industry, and this is what we've been discussing with government, is we have a moral obligation to ensure that we bring the opportunity at the doorstep of Nigeria. And this is what we're doing today, and we started now because we're showing up. And the fact that we showed up as Google is the first step to bringing an opportunity to Nigeria.
Coming up on Channel's Business Global, the final 5 stories that define 2025, from China's slowdown and the AI boom to Nvidia's rise and the return of global trade wars. And later, a special throwback to the Femi Otedola Book Club, where business, resilience and legacy took centre stage. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. Merry Christmas. We'll continue our end-of-year Channel's Business Global countdown, and we begin with number 4, China's economic slowdown. Now, China's economy slowed sharply this year. Growth fell well below official targets, weighed down by weak domestic demand, property sector stress and deflationary pressures. Trade tensions added further strain, with ripple effects felt across global markets, including in Africa. For the world's second largest economy, the slowdown reshaped trader flows and investor sentiment. Number 3 now, and that's Nvidia and the AI infrastructure boom. One company stood at the center of the AI revolution. Yes, you guessed it, that was Nvidia. The company briefly surpassed a $5 trillion valuation as demand for AI infrastructure surged. Its chips powered everything from data centers to autonomous systems, reshaping global markets and technology investment. Despite geopolitical constraints, Nvidia's dominance underlined how central AI has become to the global economy. To number 2, more artificial intelligence, which moved this year from assistance to autonomy. Agentic AI systems capable of independent decision-making transformed education, productivity, and enterprise software. The release of more advanced AI models raised hopes and fears about the future of work. For governments, businesses, and families alike, AI became a defining force shaping what comes next. Now to number 1, Trump's tariffs and the return of trade wars, which was, of course, undoubtedly the biggest business story of 2025. The US president's sweeping tariffs reshaped global supply chains, triggered market volatility, and fueled economic uncertainty. While the US avoided recession, the knock-on effects were felt worldwide, from higher costs to shifting manufacturing hubs. For countries like Nigeria, the impact was indirect but real, influencing commodity prices, currencies, and trade dynamics heading into 2026. Now, before we go, a final reflection with strong business undertones. Earlier this year, billionaire investor Femi Otedola released his memoir, Making It Big, a book exploring resilience, reinvention, and legacy. To mark the launch, Motherland Hub hosted a special book club edition here in London, bringing together young entrepreneurs and change makers from across Africa and the diaspora. The discussion explored what it takes to weather storms, reinvent in difficult moments, and build lasting impact. Lessons that resonated strongly with a new generation of African business leaders.
I was instantly transported back to a context that I'm very familiar with, which is one of community, one of cooperation, a very distinct context to what I've come to be exposed to since I've moved to the UK. So the reason why I think the Nigerian context is important is because if we don't have a truly representative story, then you end up taking things from other parts of the world that aren't necessarily to your benefit. I think the warmth that Baba showed us while we were waiting in the lobby is something that I would love to have from sort of people here in the UK that I don't often have. And it's just that understanding, it's the beneath human interaction that you're able to get. And that's something that I've come to expect from a lot of situations in Nigeria. But more on the industrialist, it's the scale. So coming back to the book, I wasn't thinking he's a billionaire, how can I relate to this story? But I was thinking, how can this book be relevant to the average Nigerian entrepreneur? And it's simple, it's in the subtext. It's lessons from a life in business. Mm-hmm. There's very, very tangible and practical lessons in this book that aid you both from a personal level, on a financial level when you're dealing with sort of your finances in your company, personal level when you're dealing with your employees, strategy level when you're coming to understanding the industry that you're in and how you get the best out of that industry. There's so many compelling insights about areas that he's done well, which we're also happy to share, but then also areas that he's not quite got it right. And I think that visibility on what business is in a very, very relatable context is one of the key reasons that I think the Nigerian context in this book in particular is resonates so much with me, and it's quite important.
What I love about books as well today is basically getting a mentor. You're basically being mentored by some people who you don't have access to, whether that's through podcasts, books, and so many people are like, I need to find now you've got a book from a billionaire who can tell you his secrets, his struggles, who can let you know, actually, yeah, you are going to hit rock bottom here, but there is a time where you're going to, need to just kind of push through it. So, yeah.
I remember when my first week in postgraduate school here, I realized that our teacher was like, we need contextual, nuanced solutions on the continent. And this was in an extracurricular thing I took called PFAL, Program for African Leadership. And she was like, here the system is, it doesn't matter your age. You walk in, you tell someone to do a task, even if they are 10 years older than you, they do it. In Nigeria, if you don't want to be frustrated, you don't just say, do this with the, I'm the boss. Chances are you'll get frustrated, whatever it is you want to get solved will not be solved, and your staff will act like they don't know anything about what you've said. So I think it's important because you get to see, like I would always say, Nigerians have grit and resilience, and it's always important to see that mirrored, especially in a system that is growing, because we don't have all the infrastructure. Like he mentions in his book, there are a lot of gaps and inefficiencies, and it's very important in a system where you think, oh, everybody already has a slice of the pie. When you notice that there are gaps, how do you plug into those gaps? And I think it is important for people to have those examples.
But the more and more we learn, the more and more I learn about what are people saying who have actually done the things that I want to do, or done similar things to what I want to do, even if I have some disagreements with them. I want to learn from their own perspectives. I want to, for different brief moments, see things from different people's eyes, and come back to myself and say, okay, how can I apply all these different things to what the things that I want to do, things that we all want to achieve. And I mean, what's really exciting about him? We were talking earlier before the cameras came up, that he doesn't give many interviews. He's one of the most mysterious business leaders. He doesn't give press conferences. I think I've watched 1 or 2 interviews he's given in probably the last 3 decades. So when he released this book, he hasn't even done an interview after saying, "Oh, this is my book, please buy it." He's just posted it. That's it. Like, buy if you want to buy, or don't buy it. And that to me, it kind of draws me in more. Fine, let me learn. Let me see if there are things here to learn from. And there are quite a lot of things,
I think particularly in Nigeria, one of our largest exports is the cultural power. And if you take this book and you take what Mr. Otedola is talking about when he talks about how he navigates political relationships or familiar relationships, and the way he's able to glean insight or nuance, and how he's able to get more out of situations than you typically would, because he understands the culture and the context of the rooms that he's in. And I'll take, for example, Topicals, my skincare brand. We were the first brand to take a brand trip, so taking influencers to the continent of Africa. Particularly, we went to Ghana. We've now also been to Lagos. But we were the first brand to ever do that. And that brand trip probably reset the industry around what brand trips look like. We took Black and brown creators who don't typically get invited by other major brands, by major brands, and we took them to Accra. And I remember talking to my board about wanting to do this, and they were confused. I remember talking to my team about wanting to do this. None of them had been to West Africa.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today. But as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week, next year, for more in-depth business analysis on Channels Business Global. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you.